the third attempt at recording this. I'm just trying to get some stuff off my chest because, and then maybe I've kind of let my emotions out already, so it might seem like I'm sort of empty of emotion, but basically, my mom was blowing up my phone earlier today, and, I figured that it was probably some family emergency, and, I always dread those kinds of calls, because so oftentimes it's kind of the stuff that you see coming down the pipeline, and you expect it to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it, and apparently they had to take my dad to the hospital. In my last video, I said that, like, things didn't seem as bad as they were, or weren't as bad as they seemed. That was mostly because my dad was trying to calm me down, because I had, like last weekend when I was talking with him about stuff, and him sounded like he was, just worn out. I couldn't sleep that night, and then that led me to not being, fully cognizant at work and getting into a whole mess of trouble. And I had told him about that, and then he tried to, say, oh, no, things aren't that bad, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because I talked to him about, like, my grandpa. My grandpa died when he was 66. It was a really young age, relatively speaking. I mean, it was 92, and it was a really rare form of heart disease. But if you trace it all back, I mean, it was due to things like sleep deprivation, high blood pressure, anxiety, just lots and lots of stress due to family members. Whether it was, whether it was his wife, my grandma, just always picking fights with him over dumb things, or it was my uncle, just being a freaking hellion and keeping my grandpa up and, all night long, because it'd be like, okay, back then you didn't have cell phones, you couldn't call to see where somebody was at, if it was past whatever, the curfew hour was or whatever. And my grandpa would be up all night waiting for my uncle to get home, and then he had to go into work at 5 a.m. with maybe, an hour or less than an hour of sleep. And you have that happen over a long enough period of time, I mean, don't be surprised if you end up developing health problems. And he ended up dying at 66, and my dad is 64. And I was talking to my dad saying, like, I see all this stuff going down exactly like in my mom's family. It's just like a carbon copy. And, the biggest problem has always been getting the women to understand, because they don't care. They are so self-absorbed in my family in particular. And, my mom called me again after I left the house today, because I was going to go get some food, try to, like, get my day going, get some homework done, that sort of deal, remain as rational as I could. And she starts calling me, and I take the call, and I'm like, first I'm like, okay, I'm not sure you're going to be able to hear me. I have my mask on, I'm outside. And then she starts explaining that, they think it was an aneurysm, like a blood vessel burst. And I'm like, I know what that is, because she starts going off on this tangent of trying to, like, talk down to me like I'm some dumb little kid who's never studied any of this sort of stuff. And then I start basically explaining that, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to hear from her because, my dad's dying right now. And this is due to those two, due to her and my sister. And of course, she starts defending herself. Oh, this is not me. I didn't do this to him, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't get it. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. I've read The Rational Male, all 3 parts that have been released. There's a 4th one that just came out, but I understand the hamster wheel rationalization. I understand how they lack the ability of taking any responsibility or accountability, but it just boggles my mind because my dad's about to die. And they can't even stop for a second and go, wait, we did this. Because, like, I know I screwed up in my life. I've made a bunch of dumb decisions. I wasted time. I definitely did stress my dad out at times. But somewhere along there, I started responding to that. And I started actually like changing myself. I started hanging around the right kind of people, making better decisions. I mean, heck, even back in 2016 when I started vlogging on this channel, I started looking and going, okay, dude, you need to stop doing this. Something's wrong here. You keep doing this, you're going to end up out, washed out of this engineering program, living on the streets, all these bad things are going to happen, And like I remember in 2017, I had to take this how to get off probation class, and as part of that, or as a result of that, I had to do a presentation where I had to essentially, answer the question how I got myself on probation. And that's really what started a lot of this self-analysis, where it's like, okay, making emotionally driven decisions, not really planning things out, not, keeping track of time, whatever, all these sorts of flaws in my approach to, like college and life and all that. And that's when I really started to make this final sort of turn towards, the better side of things. But my sister, my mother, they never did that. They just expected they could create all sorts of garbage, all sorts of problems, all sorts of, pardon me, but, BS. And that my dad or myself or some man would come along to clean it up for them. And they never had to change. They could just keep on doing the same old garbage. Like I'll tell you, the reason I blocked my sister never contacting me was because of this one final time where I've been driving to work on the freeway, and my mom had called me, and she was sobbing her eyes out, saying that, oh, my dad was going to divorce her because my sister had gone and, made up some, BS about her, that she was, fooling around on him or something like that. And I had to get my mom calmed down as I'm driving to work. And then I'm sitting there in the parking lot after I parked, and my sister's blowing on my phone, trying to basically, it's like she was at war with my mom for the umpteenth time and was trying to recruit forces to her side to go after my mom. And, going like, oh, really? You're not going to take my call? Really? And it's like, not even stopping to, comprehend or consider the fact that maybe I'm at work. Maybe I have a job. Maybe there's other stuff going on. Maybe I have responsibilities. Maybe this, that, the other. No, it's all about like whatever her little vendetta is against my mother or whoever the heck, and just trying to drag me into that sort of stuff. And then I ended up blocking her first on Facebook, and then I blocked her number. And that's sort of it's one of those hard decisions, because like I see what happened with my dad even back, when my grandpa was still around, where he was the one willing to sacrifice and, hop in his car after work and like drive over to where they lived to go and like basically babysit my uncle, who was like in his teens at the time, in high school, so that my grandpa could get some rest. And how that really never made a difference. I didn't do anything. My grandpa got my grandpa got maybe a couple more years or so, a couple more years, and then he died, and it didn't do anything. And I see this, cycle repeating again. And now it's like, I'm gonna have to be processing this over the next so many days, weeks, months, years. But it's like, I saw this coming. I tried so many damn times, whenever I talk to my mom, or when I used to talk to my sister, that, this stuff needs to end. You need to stop doing this. Dad's going to die. And when dad goes, like, look, this may make me a jerk. Maybe it's because I'm red-pilled and I understand a lot of stuff, and I'm not this self-sacrificial type anymore. I did that with that 4 years with that psycho ex-girlfriend. I did that, additional 3 years trying to impress that other girl, etc., etc. I did that for 7 years, sacrificing so much of my sanity and my health and my future so that I could basically be babysitting my sister, who is now in her 30s, or babysitting my mother, who is a recovering, air quotes recovering, I think she still probably drinks, but alcoholic, abusive, all that kind of stuff. Basically having to try and do that while going for an engineering degree, and it taking, twice as long as it should have because of stuff like that predominantly, that I just, my dad goes, if my dad goes, which is most likely going to happen. But if my dad goes, like, I know folks are probably going to comment here saying, "Oh, you got to look out for your family, bro. Like, don't be so selfish, bro." Like, when they don't even know my life story. They don't even really want to consider it's this knee-jerk reaction, this bleeding heart reaction where, it's about saving the women. Even if the women are totally screwed up POSs who are so freaking, like, self-absorbed and narcissistic, and just downright dumb, parasitic train wrecks, and vampires who just want, who, look, if I went into that, they would suck me dry the way they sucked my dad dry, the way they sucked my grandpa dry. You know what I'm saying? Blood-sucking leeches. They would just do that, and then after I was, dead, they'd find somebody else. Because in their eyes, we're disposable. We're just a disposable commodity, and you just squeeze them for as much as you can, and then when they're done, and they keel over dead, or they die at the hospital or something like that, well, too bad, so sad. I'm gonna write some eulogy to pretend that I actually cared about this guy, when all he was to me was just a utility, And that is who, how, and what they are. I know I'm probably gonna have to deal with, like, relatives going and attacking me. Like, there's this like second cousin of mine he's a divorcee who, like, I remember this one time, like, she went and, like, dared to what was it? She went and dared to, like, read me the riot act because we'd taken my mom to a Denny's, one of these, like, cafes, because she wanted to go there, but she assumed that, oh, we just took her there because we're a bunch of cheapskates, oh, she deserves so much better. She's such a wonderful woman. She's so amazing. How could you take her to a Denny's of all places? And it's like, number one, it's none of your bleeping business. Number two, she wanted to go there. And number three, no, she's not a wonderful woman. She's my mother, okay? And she has all sorts of flaws, not just flaws, but just, like, she's done all sorts of screwed up things to our family that it's sort of like, if we really were, so narcissistic and uncaring, like, my dad would have divorced her years ago, and she would be living on the streets as one of these homeless people. Like, I've walked around, my area. I see homeless people all the time, and some of them are women, and some of them reminded me of my mom if my dad wasn't in the picture, Same thing with my sister. And they do not understand the value or appreciate the value of a good man who has his act together, who's willing to do all that for them. They just expect it. See, now it's like I'm gone from being sad to being angry. Now, I'm sure the sadness is going to come back if I do get that call that he's gone, and I'm not going back to, like, save them, And the worst part of this all is that, like, I won't be able to be there to hold his hand when he goes. They had to go and build up this wall between my dad and I. And I could go into details about all the stuff that my sister would do to manipulate my dad and myself to be at each other's throats for so many bloody years. Things like that. And it's like my sister stole my father from me. At least last several years, there were times where I wish I could have just gone out and hung out with my dad, gone fishing, gone camping, maybe even gone hunting or something like that, or just, times where, like, the only person who was willing or able to go with him to the movies just to have a, night out, night away from things was myself, and we'd go to the movies. Just simple things like that, and, I don't think my mother and my sister will ever understand that the reason I don't ever want to get married, why I don't even want to have sex, is because of this kind of stuff. Not only that, but obviously the experience I've had, in relationships. It's like, I'm not gay, I'm not homosexual, I'm not any of those things. I'm just, I'm cognizant I'm cognizant of what happens when a guy finally gets laid and all the things that he'll end up doing and going through just so he can get more of that, you know? And I'm cognizant of where this all leads, because I've seen this happen with my dad. I saw it happen with my grandpa, from what I remember of him, the few years that he was in my life. And they're taking him away from me. I can't even have my father in my life. I don't know what else to say. I mean, unless I get a call updating me on the situation and saying either he's gone or he somehow pulled through. Sorry. Maybe now some folks will understand why a lot of my videos are just me looking all blank inside, you know, dead inside, looking blank, having that blank look on my face. There's a lot of stuff buried behind all of this, just years and years of abuse. And of course, there were enough times where my dad was kind of like their tool. And it wasn't until I moved away that he really started to realize how screwed up they were. Because then it was like, oh, you know, it didn't have me there to be some sort of shield, you know. But here we are. I knew this was going to happen. It makes me so freaking angry because, again, like, I know I will never, ever get those two to ever own up to their part in all of this. I knew this was going to happen. And, you know, the things that would keep me up at night about it was just the fact that I couldn't do anything because it wasn't me. I had done my part, you know. I had gotten to a point where my dad didn't have to really worry about me, you know. Outside of a handful of times, like getting my license plate replaced or, you know, stuff like that. Out of a handful of times, my dad did not have to worry about me anymore. But he was like, oh, you know, because that was the case, what my sister and my mom thought they could just up their level of garbage and BS. Anyways, I'm gonna stop recording this video. Maybe I'll record another one where I talk about some more of the details behind all this. But anyways, I'll see you folks around. Thanks for watching. Bye.